It has been a long-running joke that mainstream archaeologists, when they come upon an ancient megalith or an ancient site, they will instantly declare it to be a tomb or temple, often with absolutely no evidence for the location being such in the past. And then from this, they will declare this temple of death or death cult assumption to become the official status of this particular megalithic location. Well, we see countless hundreds of cases of ancient sites which have been excavated by archaeologists where absolutely no bones or bodies have ever been discovered, and the megalith or ancient site is still branded as a tomb and sometimes as a temple. The reason for this being simply projection. For centuries, the excavation and the investigations into ancient sites remained in the hands of exclusively religious institutions, mostly Jesuit orders, but the Protestants were just as involved. Oxford University and the Royal Geographic Society in London were fiercely Presbyterian institutions. The same can be said for Harvard and Yale in the United States. In other words, these Christian archaeologists took their own Christian death cult psychosis and projected it and imposed it upon ancient people. Certainly, there is no doubt that many ancient sites were tombs, but they're not the majority. In fact, they're a small minority. But still, this projection of Christian assumptions regarding death, burial, and resurrection and so on, ancestor death cults, remains steadfast within mainstream archaeology even to this day. Which brings us to this remarkable place. The sign above the door reads, Nos ossos que agui estamos halos vos ossos esperamos. In other words, we bones that are here, for yours await. And this is the Chapel de Ossos, in English the Chapel of Bones, in Évora, Portugal. A place hardly unique, as there are similar necropolises all over Europe, particularly in the Czech Republic and in Italy, and there are several in Portugal itself. This particular Chapel of Bones at Évora was built by a Franciscan monk. The reason being, the Franciscans, ever the greedy property developers, like all monastic orders and convents, wanted to free up development land, and often cemeteries were located at these specific locations. Often excuses of the bodies overflowing in the cemeteries, and this was true in some cases, was used to create these chapels of bones or necropolises. The Chapel of Bones itself in Évora is built in the Gothic style and was constructed as a compromise so as not to anger the citizens of Évora, who had generations of their families and loved ones buried in these particular cemeteries that were earmarked for development or redevelopment. The bones were removed and then artistically, quote unquote, arranged within the new chapel, creating what to some is a gruesome, and on the surface perhaps it is, but it's also a strangely enchanting necropolis that we see today. It is estimated that there are approximately 5,000 or so skeletons in the chapel, give or take a couple of rotting corpses of women and babies that were hanging on the wall and now are displayed in glass boxes. The skulls themselves from the cemeteries are generally cemented into the walls in such a way to create pleasing to the eye arrangements. Another nearby phrase, which reads, "Better is the day of death than the day of birth," taken directly from the Bible. To the modern eye, places such as the Chapel of Bones in Evora may be unsettling, or even ghastly, but this is only because in the modern world our relationship with death has been highly sanitized. This is what makes the bone cult at such places comforting in some ways, when you get up close and actually touch the skeletons, as I did myself. It harkens towards the ancestor cults we see even amongst other species like elephants, who visit the bones of their family members and touch and fondle them in remembrance of their lives. Indeed, this was how I felt myself. I looked upon the mainly tiny skulls, compared to modern skulls, wondering about the lives of these ordinary people. It was not disturbing in the least, and in some ways was actually quite life-affirming. Complementing all these bones are also the many human stories and sometimes tragedies. One includes that of a sizable number of skeletons which came from a major disaster in the town of Monte Maore, when a freak lightning bolt struck a gunpowder store, killing hundreds and destroying many houses in the location. I can't help at this point but think of an ironic pagan twist of the god Thor having the final say. The Chapel of Bones is part of a much larger and rather impressive main church of San Francisco, which is a lot more closer to a cathedral in size and scale than a town church. The Church of San Francisco itself contains many examples of Christian esoteric symbolism and that of secret societies involved with the church and its history. I would actually encourage people to visit the Chapel of Bones in Evora, especially those of you who are squeamish about such things. You may surprise yourself and come away with a stronger sense of your own mortality and your own place in this world. Christianity is no doubt a cult built upon death and suffering, yet within this expression of its own pathological spirituality, there are actually accidental gems of enlightenment and wisdom if you are willing to seek them out.